Anneline Padayachee is a food scientist. So it's always interesting to talk to people who have had no exposure to the industry. And before we asked Anneline to present here, she didn't know a lot about the industry, but she's gone to a lot of trouble to find out a heck of a lot about it, you'll find. So Anneline, as I said, asked to speak at LIVEXchange. She's been talking to just about everyone she's come across about the industry. She's a food scientist who helps everyone from farmers to policymakers see nutrition not as a checkbox, but as a cornerstone of equity, dignity and global well-being. So to wrap up the conference on this thing, can you please give a very warm welcome to Anneline. There's a clicker there.
All right. Might use one of these. Okay. I know, last session, nearly there, and I'm talking. And I actually need you guys to concentrate because we're going to cover some really hardcore stuff in about 3 minutes. But before we get to it, I do have a disclaimer. We are going to be talking a bit about human nutrition. So you're humans. What I say, do not take this as a private one-on-one consultation. I am not diagnosing a single one of you today. All right? So it's for educational purposes, but if you want to take it and talk to your doctor and say, I learned about this in this thing that I just went to, and can you give me some insight on myself? Sure, you can do that, but no diagnosis is happening in the next 40 minutes, all right? Okay, so live export. I mean, this is your bread and butter. This has got nothing to do with my bread or my butter, and so when I was asked to come have a look at this and talk to you guys about nutrition, especially nourishing global communities in a socially responsible world, I was like unsure of it. Now, I have spent a lot of time on farms and oysters and things like that, but I'd never done anything with this, and let's be honest, your perception in the media is not the greatest. So I decided to go learn before I said yes, and so I went with Karen up to the Northern Territory from Brisbane, Darwin. I went to a quarantine station. I met Patrick. I went and met a ship. I saw a ship. I went on the ship. I saw the trucks. I talked to the truck drivers. I did not know what a stevedore was. Didn't even know how to spell that word. So I spoke to those guys, and I met buffalo. I'm like, wow, I didn't know we had that in Australia. Like, crazy. So I clocked up about 4,500 kilometers in preparation for coming here today, and it just blew my mind. I could not believe how awesome this industry is and why there's just so much negativity. Like, I get it, something bad happened, but, you know, we change when we know better, we can do better. And so seeing that facility, the quarantine station, I didn't understand, why do we quarantine animals that are leaving?
Okay, so I am here at a port in the Darwin port, and I've just done a tour of the Ganado Express, and you can see it's a really unusual shaped ship.
I was doing this live on Instagram.
It's a custom-made built ship, like $40 million or something, for transporting livestock. And like, seriously, I can't say I really knew what I was going to expect, but this was incredible. Okay, so.
And then, because I thought, well, that was really cool, but I mean, truthfully, I really need to know what happens on the other side.
It is this kind of grayish color.
So I found an Indonesian restaurant.
It's mincy, but I have been told that it's got a lot of flour mixed into it.
And tasted bakso balls.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah, this has got a lot of ginger. It tastes nice, but you can look at the texture. It is super, super fine. It's like beef is only added for a bit of flavor.
And at the same time, I was doing a survey to actually understand, what do the industries or the sectors that are adjacent to agriculture think about live export, right? So I did a live poll. I did this thing on LinkedIn because that's the world that I live in. And so these are mainly scientists, PhDs, academics, researchers in those spheres: food science, food industry, dietitians, public health nutritionists, people who are experts in food security. And so you look at the poll, all right? So initially it looks like 35% say ban it, 35% support it, 29% are unsure of it. I had to take all the agriculture people out because there was a lot of Aggie people who had very strong views and they put their own votes in. So once I took them out, 45% of sectors that are adjacent to this sector. Not the general public, but people who have a vested interest in nutrition and feeding poor people and poor communities and ensuring a safe food supply, 45% of them were very much so against it. 37% unsure. I know a bit about it, pros and cons, but I really don't know why it's relevant. And only 18% were in support of it. And so I actually think those unsure ones, that's a really cool opportunity for you guys to tap into and educate them and get them on your side, because I would honestly say I was one of them. Now, Slido is not working, so we're not going to do Slido, but first response, what does nutrition mean to you? Erin, go. Feeding your body in order to live a fit and healthy lifestyle, right? Everyone agree with that? All right, next question. What do you mean to nutrition? Patrick, where are you? Yeah. Don't know how to answer that question? That's okay. That's okay, because at the end of this, I'm going to ask you it again. What do you mean to nutrition? Because this is the crux of what this is entirely all about. So we're going to go speed cycle through this. We're going to do a crash course in Nutrition 101. But I'm first going to give you some context and challenges that you're in. And it's not just the anti-activist mentality out there in the media and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of stuff going wrong in general for agriculture, and then you guys are literally like right at the bottom of the barrel. So there's a lot more issues you got to deal with. We're going to talk about the factors that affect nutrition, and then how inequality drives malnutrition. And then I'm going to ask you that question, what do you mean for nutrition? Okay? All right, so context and challenges, the world that we live in. Number one, a lot of people don't like the word farmers. They don't like farmers. Why? Because cows burp and grain producers use pesticides or fertilizer or something on the ground. So farming in a lot of places has become a dirty word and people don't even want to say that they're a farmer. So that's a problem. Then we've got meat taxes. The planet's warming up. So ultimately, if you're a beef producer, sheep producer, anything that's animal related, you may get a tax. So that's another problem. We don't like you because the planet is heating up and it is entirely your fault, not the fact that I have 3 mobile phones, I'm a single person and I have 3 cars as well. So that's got nothing to do with me, entirely the cow's fault. Right? If the world adopted a plant-based diet, we could use the land for a whole lot more. Yes, that's true. We could. We could also have a lot more micronutrient deficiencies, but we won't talk about that, right? And then this is an actual billboard that was in Germany. Heineken did this a couple of years ago, and I just kind of think, seriously, guys? Seriously? You're trying to substantiate that alcohol is good for the planet by doing a water comparison and like beef and jeans. I mean, we need to wear clothes. They're apparently really, really, really bad. And tea and beer are really, really, really good. And they don't actually talk about the fact that beef is largely green water, so that's from rain and creeks and things like that. Not actually, water that could be used for human consumption. You've got your documentaries. Game Changers was a game changer. It really encouraged a lot of people to get into plant-exclusive diets because it is going to make me an athlete like the athletes that were on the show, right? And then we've also got all the health messengers. So the colorectal cancer, there is definitely some truth in that. Apparently our schools are containing cancer chemicals in the forms of processed meats. So again, There is a lot of things going wrong here. Now, I spoke to a professor of, he's in plant biology and genetics at University of Sydney, and he said this to me, and I said to him, can I use this? And Brent was like, yeah, go for it, because he's right. For the first time in history, farmers need to defend themselves, that they are not responsible for everything from obesity to global warming. The problem is that they generally like to get on with it in the background, probably because they're also time poor and there's only 24 hours in a day. But now they are being focused on from every angle, and it's hard to position, and it's a hard position being the global scapegoat. Now add live export onto that, and add the unknowns and the misnomers. And yeah, we've had some bad stuff happen in history that just keeps re-emerging itself, and those pictures keep coming back from the dead. Add that to the mix, and that is you. How awesome. What a great position to be in. Now, when I was doing some work researching this and talking to people like, do I even want to go talk to this crowd? I was told on a personal level, if you do this, this is going to negatively affect your career. And my thing was like, well, as a scientist, we got to go research. We got to find the answers based on what's there. You look at the data and you just assess it based on the data, not on your emotions. So that was like, okay, the more you're telling me not to do this, the more I actually want to do this. Now, here is something interesting. Google Trends, I highly recommend you use this. Do it at least every 3 to 6 months and just put yourself in there. So I did this yesterday, live export. I wanted to see, it tells you how it is trending on Google. You can put anything into Google Trends. It tells you what is the most searched words, the searched topics in the world, in Australia, different time periods. So I did it for live export, and I put in, what is that? 10-year period from 2004 or 20-year period. And so you can see what are the words that are being related to it. Windows Live, Live Mail, but Live Export is there a little bit. It's there. Definitely you can see where it peaks, and that's usually when there's a big thing that's gone wrong and it's in the media. And so just the last year up until now, it has definitely trended a little bit more, having that peak in Australia, New Zealand, but look at the other countries that are searching for it. Singapore, Ethiopia, Ireland, South Africa. It doesn't tell you what people are searching for in those countries, but it tells you that they are actually looking into it. Why are they looking into it? What are they doing over there? Now, I thought, well, how does live export compare to, for example, I think this is a huge food security issue, and you guys are playing in that space. How do you compare to food security? You don't. Food security is much higher. So that just tells us that when it comes to food security, people look at it as one problem and they don't see live export as being part of that. They don't see it related, they don't see it contributing to it, they don't see it helping. Food sustainability, not so much of a thing either. They're not making that connection at all. So then I thought, well, let me compare it to nutrition. Are there any connections between live export and nutrition? And you can see that it tells you it on its own. There is no connection. No one is thinking about live export in terms of feeding the world. I've heard that a lot, but there is no connection there. So all that means is, even though that's accurate and that's what you guys are doing, maybe you actually need to start joining the dots and helping folks to see that is what you are doing, because they're not seeing it at all. They're not seeing that you play with food. They're not seeing that you're part of the food supply. They are not seeing it at all. All right, global population, it's growing. We know that. And if we're lucky, we may peak at a maximum of about 11 billion by 2100. Who is under the age of 30-ish? Anyone 30-ish and under? Okay, so Tiffany, there you go. You'll probably still be alive. We've got to do it right so Tiffany can have a good life by then. The rest of us may not be around or very old. So we know that the global population is growing, but where are they growing? They're growing everywhere. There's 2 places that doesn't seem to grow on this map. This is the amount of people per kilometer of land mass. And the 2 places that doesn't really change is Alaska, very, very, very cold, and Australia. Very, very, very hot, ironically. We don't change a whole lot, those two places, but everywhere else does. And you can see where the populations are growing. Asia, Southeast Asia, India, Africa, it is definitely getting way more populous over there. And one thing that's really important is this. 2008 was a critical point in our world. It is when the GDP, purchasing power parity, crossed over from the developing countries, crossed beyond the developed countries. All right, now that's just because they've got very large populations, large buying power. When you've got more people, you can do a lot more. Not that those countries are individually very wealthy, but they have a lot of people, a lot of infrastructure, and they need to purchase food to feed them. That is something that we have to consider. And you guys literally do this. This is important to realize it. What we do know is that as populations improve, and as they get a bit more money, we know that the poverty trend line is definitely decreasing. So this is the number of people who are living under about $6.50 USD. All right, so if we drop that down to $3.65, you can see it over time, that trend line is decreasing. So if there's less people living under these very low amounts of money, that means there's more people living above it. And if they have a bit more money, the first thing that they spend their money on is not a Rolex, it is food, okay? So that's cool. That's exactly what we need to do. We've got people who need food, who have some money to spend on food, and what can Australia do in that place, considering not many people are growing in our ginormous landmass? Now, when we look at our demands, our protein demands over time, right? So Australia starts off at roughly about 70 grams in 1960, and you can see how the world is evolving. You've got some new players coming into it, and by the time we get to 2017, this is as much as the data is out there at the moment. Where we land is we've got a couple of new players in there, like India, for example. I'm not saying that they're eating beef, but they do eat a lot of lamb. They started off at 4 grams, and now they're 15. That's a huge increase across 1.8 billion people, if you think about it like that. Nigeria, Brazil, Israel is definitely right up there. So these are the different markets that actually want more animal-derived protein-rich foods. Over time, our dietary intake has modified over time, and you don't need to be a nutritionist to see how this affects health, right? So hunter-gatherer lifestyle, there are still some populations that do that, very few and far between, but it was mainly a starch-based diet. Not much refined sugar at all. Well, they didn't have cookies and biscuits back then, so none, right? Whereas if you move into the modern affluent society, most of our energy comes from fat. We get some from our refined sugars, our complex carbohydrates, and a bit from our protein. And so as the intake of our diet has evolved to include different energy sources, of course that is going to affect the different types of health conditions we have. And this is what we're seeing in a lot of developing countries, is they're transitioning into these more affluent diets, and so we're having this at the same time. Just under 1 billion people chronically hungry and having undernutrition related issues. 2.3 billion go to bed every single night either moderately or severely food insecure. 2.3 billion people every night. At the same time, 1.3 billion people are in a state of what we consider obesity, and that prevalence is also increasing. So we've got both undernutrition from not enough food and overnutrition from too much food existing at the exact same time in history, which is a real conundrum to be in. And here's the problem, is that the obesity chronic health condition issue, which is a problem and we do need to deal with it, is taking up a lot of the limelight because it affects the wealthy countries, the developed nations. But that doesn't mean that the malnutrition and the micronutrient issues and the lack of food has necessarily gone away. That problem is still making a big impact. It's just that we don't hear about it as much because it doesn't affect Australia, New Zealand, the USA, the UK, things like that. It doesn't affect the developed world as much. Doesn't mean to say it's not important. It's just a challenge. Now, I got this book, and highly recommend if you can get your hand on a copy of it. It's called what the world eats. And so I ordered it from the USA and I got these photos. And so this is what I looked at. What is it that countries where Australia sends animals to in live export, what do they actually eat? Because I couldn't go all the way out there, right? So in China, this is roughly about what they eat. Their favorite food is sweet and sour pork. You can see there's a lot of vegetables in there, and they've got some packs of pre-packed meat, some beef, some chicken, some pork. Down the bottom, you've got Egypt. That is a family. These are all, your average families in these countries. And you see how much they spend on their food. So in China, it's roughly about 155 USD. In Egypt, it works out to roughly about 68 USD. And their favorite food is okra and mutton, lots of plants, a little bit of red meat. Let's have a look at Australia, and this is in Brizzy. Lots of soft drinks, lots of processed foods, lots of sausages, lots of everything except for fruits and veggies. And I put Luxembourg in here as well. And so Australia, roughly about $376 per week on food, and Luxembourg, $465. And why I chose Luxembourg is because Eat Lancet, highly recommend you try and read it. Eat Lancet is this global public health policy that is sweeping the world, that every country is trying to develop their dietary guidelines on. It is meant to be the global diet that we are all supposed to eat. And its founding office is in Luxembourg, and have a look at what the people in Luxembourg have access to and how much money they can spend on their diet. And they're the guys coming up with a global plan for the entire world. And they have got no clue about what people in China, Indonesia, Malawi, Mali are actually consuming. These are the challenges that your industry is facing. So, nutrition. By the end of the next 5 minutes, you will not be dietitians, but you are going to understand your own self and nutrition in a lot more detail, all right? Now, nutrition is an interesting science. We're only about 220 years old, and it seems to be that we don't actually know what we're talking about, because every 10 years, if you look at Time magazine, we change our mind on stuff, right? Just look at the evolution of fat and eggs, and the next magazine should be coming out soon saying that, processed food is the devil or something like that, right? That's going to be the iteration, I reckon. Here's the thing. It is a new science. We're only 220 years old. We were discovered off the back of discovering the elements of the periodic table. So medicine predates us by a long, long, long time. The role of food in health was never actually understood that clearly until roughly about the 1900s, not that long ago, when we started discovering these nutrient deficiencies, scurvy and the sailors and lemons and how they weren't getting it. What's in the lemons? Vitamin C. Oh, okay, let's see what's happening in the human body. So we're not a very old science. We're always catching up to everybody else. So moving on from the 1900s into the 1950s and 1960s and beyond, we've just had all these world wars. We've had the Great Depression, and now we're booming. And it's peace and prosperity. Women are entering the workforce. The Colonel invented KFC chicken as a way to help families. If he did it any other time in history, he would never have been successful. But he chose the right moment to make the KFC bucketed chicken, not knowing nutrition and the implications of what he was doing, but he had a good motivation. And that led to a lot of chronic health conditions. And so now we start seeing a rise in heart disease, diabetes, and what happens? We have to have something to vilify, so that's why we got the fat movement, low-fat diets, I quit sugar, salt, all that sort of stuff. And there's some truth in it, but it can get a bit lopsided. Moving into the early 2000s, we were looking at dietary patterns. So how come the Japanese live for a really long time, eat a lot of fish, and they don't have Alzheimer's? How come in Italy, prostate cancer is not so common, but they live on tomatoes like there's no other place on the planet? So what are these dietary patterns that are happening, and how does it affect human health? Moving on from there, we started looking at, okay, bigger picture, population health, the gut microbiome. It was officially given organ status in 2013. We got a new organ that we never actually knew we had until 2013. Looking at how our genetics affects our health, and how we can use genomic technologies to actually assess disease in different individuals. And yet, at the same time, we're still doing research in the other spaces at the exact same time. That has not gone away. But moving into the future, this is where we're moving into the future. Understanding mechanisms of action. So what is it about the iron that is in red meat versus the iron that is in legumes? Why is the red meat iron so absorbable in the human body versus the iron in legumes? How come it's not as absorbable in the human body? So we're looking in things like that. Personalized nutrition and food system frameworks. So it's how do we create an entire system, a framework, a structure, all the moving pieces that allow nutrition to sit as the foundation of society. That is cool. That's really cool that we're actually starting to see that way. The conundrum is researchers do this stuff and it only filters down to the rest of us about 15 years later. So I'm giving you insight. This is happening in real time. You guys are ahead of the game. This is cool, right? We eat food, not nutrients. If there's one thing you take away from today is this. We eat food. No one sits down to a plate of pills and powders. If you did, at lunch today, you would probably be complaining to Karen that this is really bad. I bought my ticket and I got a protein powder. Like, come on, right? We eat food, not nutrients. But food is our primary source of these nutrients. Supplements have a place in our diet, but it's not supposed to be every single day. Food is. So when we're talking about our nutrients, we're talking about our macros. So macro means large. We need it in more than 1 gram per day. Very smart, large, macronutrient, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. They also provide us with energy. We've got our micronutrients, means we need it in less than 1 gram per day, so little. That's our minerals and our vitamins. And then we've got these things called non-nutrients, because we didn't really know what to call them. And that's pretty much fiber, water, and our bioactives, our antioxidants. They support the functions in our body. So that's your nutrients. And they provide, so our macros provide us with different amounts of energy. So if you have a look at your net energy, this is after you've eaten it. Carbohydrates gives you about 16 kilojoules of energy for 1 gram. Protein gives you 17 kilojoules of energy for 1 gram, whereas fat gives you 37 kilojoules of energy for 1 gram. So it's way more dense in energy. And that's why you hear these things like the keto diet, low carb diet. It is entirely based on energy provenance, yeah? Then we've got our micros. So these are all of our different nutrients. We've got some fat-soluble vitamins, some water-soluble vitamins, our minerals, our other compounds. These are all packaged not as individual little compounds. You don't see it in your steak, but they're all there, except for fiber and some antioxidants. But they are all there, and they interact with each other, creating a network structure. And how they interact with each other in that steak, in that lettuce leaf, in that tomato, in that curry will affect how our body digests it and gets it out of the food we eat. So this is the second part of nutrition, our digestive tract. We've got a stomach, which breaks it down. It's at roughly pH 1 to 2, and it needs to be that way because under a pH of 2 is when protein actually uncoils. If it's above pH 2, protein won't uncoil. So drinking alkaline water does not actually work. It's a great marketing ploy. Then you've got your small intestine, which is 6 meters long. So it's the height of an adult male giraffe packed in here. And this is entirely where absorption takes place. So anything that is not absorbed in the small intestine ends up in our colon. And so if we don't absorb it, we poop it. So nutrition is only as good as it is absorbed. If it is not absorbed, we have made really good quality poop. Not dissimilar from cattle, like, what is it? Cow dung or something, right? Same sort of deal. We've got a whole lot of different bacteria that starts off and moves down, and it becomes a lot more in numbers, and they're also anaerobic as they move through the chain. And that produces a health effect. So what you eat, your bacteria does not have the luxury of choosing its own food. It will eat whatever it gets. So we've also got to think about them. That's the second part of nutrition. All right, you've done your crash course in nutrition. You can all go into an entry-level stage to become dietitians now. Now, what are the factors that affect it? What is in food doesn't mean that it's easily absorbable in the body. Now, I'm going to use protein as that example. There are 4 factors that affect any nutrient in food and the human body. We could be talking about iron, we could be talking about B12, we could talk about calcium. Same principle. We're going to just talk about protein, right? So firstly, it's the quantity. Quantity, how much do I need as an individual? How much do you need? How much does an elderly person need? How much does a pregnant woman need? How much does a newborn child need? What do they need to support their life? And then secondly, what is the quantity that's actually in the food, right? Then you've got digestion. Break it down and absorb it. You've got the type of nutrient, its actual structure, and then you've got the chemistry or the network, the matrix that it comes in. So protein in milk versus protein in yogurt. Very different. Started off the exact same thing. One was a liquid phase, and now it's a semi-solid, and then we set it for a little bit longer and make it into a block of cheese. That protein, it's still the same, but its structure of that food has changed, and that affects how we break it down, yeah? So if we're looking at quantity, protein requirements, for example, it varies across ages, from very young people to elderly people, depending on how active you are, how much muscle tissue you have. If you're an athlete, you need a whole lot more. Varies between guys and girls, varies between if a lady's pregnant, she has a higher protein requirement. And then it also varies within the foods that we eat. So when you hear about like beans have a source of protein, that's true. Tofu has a source of protein, 100%. Crickets are a great source of protein, that's all true. Yes, but the amounts are different. So if you look at a steak, roughly about 83 grams steak, you've got about 21 grams of protein in that steak. Now, obviously, cultured meat, which is made from a cell of the steak, has exactly the same chemistry makeup. But these serves all give you the exact same amount of energy, all right? So all of them provide me with exactly the same amount of energy, but if you look at the amount of protein you get and how much you have to eat, I've got to eat double the amount of a steak. I've got to eat about 160 grams of kidney beans, and even then I get only 13 grams of protein, all right? So quantity varies between the foods that we eat. That's number one. When it comes to food and the nutrients that it contains, quantity does not necessarily mean quality. Quality, how do we actually absorb it? So when it comes to digestion and absorption, we have to take it down another step. So in the case of proteins, they are made up of amino acids, little teeny tiny individual compounds, and they string them together. It looks literally like a necklace of beads, of pearls. And so those amino acids that are in there, how much of those amino acids can I actually absorb? And that is determined by 2 things. Number 1, how good your digestive tract works. And number 2 is the compounds that are in yellow, and they've got IA on the end, that means indispensable amino acid or essential amino acid. Those are the amino acids the human body cannot actually manufacture. We can only get it from food. As awesome as we are as humans, we are also very flawed, and we have to actually get those amino acids from food. The rest of it we can make. Once we have all of those 20 amino acids, we can then use it to build muscle. We can use it to build proteins in our body, keratin in your hair, your skin cells. We can use it after we've got all of those compounds. Now here's the thing. Only animal-derived foods are a source of all essential amino acids in one go. You have a steak, you have got all of your essential amino acids. Lamb, all of your essential amino acids. Even pork, all of your essential amino acids. Beans don't have all of them. They're lacking in some. Bread's lacking in some. Rice is lacking in some. So you've actually got to combine beans and rice together to get that. You've got to combine certain legumes with certain wheat products to get it. So it can be done. 100%. You can get all of your essential amino acids from a plant-exclusive diet, but you've got to know what to do. So if you don't know what to do, the easiest way to get these nutrients is just to eat a piece of meat. If you can afford it, if you can access it, if it's available, if it's within your belief system, it is the easiest way to deliver those nutrients that are lacking when we're talking about protein. Now, so that is the first thing, quantity that's in the food, remember? And the second part is how much is digestible in the human body. If it's not digestible, all you're doing is just pooping it out. So when it comes to our plants, right? Almonds have protein, chickpeas have protein. Yes, they do. There's a thing called a DAS score. A digestibility assay. It is used around the world to assess the nutritional quality, or you hear the term nutritional density of different foods. If the score is under 75, that is a low-grade protein. It has a poor level of digestibility. We're not going to absorb a whole lot of protein from it. If it is above 100, it is considered a high-grade score, which means our body is designed to absorb the protein at its maximal from that food. So let's look at our plants. The only one that's not doing too bad is soy. Pea protein's okay-ish, but the rest of them are not that great, to be perfectly honest, not even tofu. When you look at your animals, on the other hand, our animal-sourced foods like beef, chicken, eggs, milk, your gold standard is milk protein, all of them are above 100. So that's the point, is when you hear the messages that protein is protein is protein, you can just get rid of meat, just give them tofu and beans. Yes, you can eat that. That's true. You'll have a full belly, but you're not necessarily going to get all the nutrition out of it. And that's important to realize that. So the quality of a protein, and therefore the food source, is really, really important when we're talking about nutritional benefits. The WHO came up with this like a long time ago, and they were spot on accurate. Now, you've done your crash course in it. This is where you guys actually fit in. Now, nutritional inequality drives malnutrition. So environment, social, and governance issues, ESG, are the biggest things in the world. Every single government is trying to do their ESG policies, right? So this is where you guys play an incredible role. Now, I've used Indonesia as an example because they are the biggest live export country that we're sending beef to. Now, don't worry about the gray bars, but look at the circles that I've just highlighted. So this is for red meat consumption. That is what the national average of red meat consumption is in Indonesia. And that is the global average. That's where the rest of the world, third world countries, the USA, Australia, the UK, everybody else, that's where they're sitting at. And that's the national average of Indonesia. There's a problem, right? It's a huge issue. It's a huge problem. Why is this a big problem in Indonesia? Because unfortunately, they've got some really big health issues. So thankfully, they're getting their breastfeeding right. Good, that's great. Bubs are getting fed. But low birth weight babies. Very little progress is made in that area. Childhood stunting, childhood wasting is still a big problem in Indonesia. And unfortunately, anemia, iron deficiency anemia, is actually getting worse. The easiest problem in the world to fix is giving women 2 pieces of red meat a week. We can fix that issue. It is getting worse in Indonesia. So if you have a look at anemia prevalence in women, okay, so especially when you're pregnant, because your iron needs definitely go up a lot more, you can have a look at it. Nearly 45% of pregnant women in Indonesia actually have iron deficiency anemia, which is tough. You've got childhood stunting. So kids not reaching their full capacity of growing and developing, not reaching their full capacity of mental development, purely because their body is not receiving the nutrients that they need. Now, this little bub, this is a little live birth weight baby. Low birth weight baby, sorry. So low birth weight babies, they're born full term. They're not preemies, they can be preemies, but they are born full term. So over 37 weeks, but they are born under 2.5 kilos. Or even less. And so the problem is when they're in mum, they're not getting enough nutrition into the little bub. And so when it's born, it is born so severely underdeveloped that its organs, it can have organ failure, it can have physical impairment if it does survive, mental development issues and cognitive function can be impaired because it hasn't received the nutrition it needs when it's in utero. Because now that it's out of the world, that little baby has to actually start eating. It has to drink breast milk, and its digestive tract is not actually developed. So you can see this issue that it's in this unfortunate cycle. Now, the global trend is 1 in 7 bubs, unfortunately, worldwide, and it's mainly in our developed countries, Africa, India, and in some parts of South America can have it, like some remote villages have it a lot. 1 in 7 bubs are born, low birth weight bubs. In Indonesia, now it looks like it's a downward trend. It's really not that much of a downward trend. We've moved from 11% to 10%. So 1 in 10 babies in Indonesia are born as low birth weight bubs. And here's why this is a problem, why I think what you guys do is so awesome, is because the biggest issue it is one of the causal factors. One of the biggest causal factors for a full-term low birth weight baby is iron. Iron deficiency anemia. 2 serves of red meat a week, 90 grams per serve. To a pregnant mum, we can deal with this problem. And then you deal with the little bub, no more live birth weight babies or low birth weight babies, and no more stunting, no more wasting. That chain reaction is huge. And all it needs is a cow. It's pretty cool. It's absolutely amazing when you think about the flow-on effects. So nutrition is not the concept of a single food or a single ingredient or a single nutrient, but it comes from the sum total of what we eat over time. And so when you look at meat, it has a high biological value. It's got a lot of awesome stuff beyond protein. It is a multi-nutrient food. So it's got a lot of good stuff going for it. Now, in the lead up to this, Nettie's here, I went and spoke to, I was tasting the bakso balls. I found an Indonesian restaurant. I wanted to taste, like, what do Indonesian people eat? How do they eat beef? And I spoke to some Indonesian students, and I asked them the question, do you know what live export is? Have you seen the cows in Indonesia? And they both had, one was from Jakarta, one was from a village. They knew about it. They bought their meat from the wet markets. I'm like, what does live export mean to you? If you could tell Australia one thing, if I could put you on a billboard, what would you want Australia to know about the cattle that come over there? And that's what they said. Thank you, Australia. We're just so grateful that you help us, you support us, you allow us to eat meat our way. Australians should be so proud that they are helping my country and my people eat good food, and also keep our culture instead of forcing us to lose our history. That's awesome. And then I spoke to Nenny on the phone, hadn't met her. I called her up and I'm like, I just want to get into your head. Like, what do these cows mean to your environment, your people, your community? And I just thought this was awesome. The live cattle are breaking the cycle of poverty for thousands, 10,000s of Indonesians. For the first time, many villages can actually send their kids to uni. And I like the word she said. They feel confident that they can actually afford to pay for their uni fees. It is so much more than just nutrition. You're breaking the cycle of poverty. That is incredible. Economic development. And I know you guys are Australians. We've got this whole tall poppy syndrome. We're super humble. And I know you're feeling like, oh my gosh, is she talking about us? Yes, I am. Sometimes you need someone to hold up the mirror and show you what you actually are all about. So, live exporters, what do you do for nutrition? I'm pretty sure you got a feel of what you do now, but if you still don't, here's a hint. There's 17 Sustainability Development Goals by the UN. And out of 17, you guys are actually touching directly into 9. And the number 1, no poverty. And number 2, 0 hunger. Number 3, good health and well-being. Those 3 constantly trump every single issue in the world. You hear governments all around talking about it. I sit on the International Science Council, and I hear it. I read the policies. I can honestly say I do not know of a single organization that is hands-on involved in the trenches, dealing directly with no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being. You guys are doing it. Yes, you make money from it, but what business doesn't? If you didn't make money, you wouldn't be doing it. You'd all be broke and I have no idea, flipping burgers at Macca's or something. I've got no idea what you'd be doing, but you wouldn't be doing this. So there's nothing wrong with a business model, but you're actually also doing all of this stuff. And there's a really, I think, from a person who was totally unsure about live export, there is an extremely strong case for you guys not only just to be here, but I think the rest of Australia should be backing you up in a stronger way. So I like to say thank you to you for what you guys do.
Thank you, Ellen. Do I have questions done? Yeah, we can take some questions. Is there questions? Thank you very much for that very inspiring lesson in nutrition. Thank you. Do we have any questions? We have time for a couple. This one, yes.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Anneline. Billy Marshall here. Just following on from the graph you showed right at the start with the 45% in the industry saying they were for the ban, 37 unsure, and you said yourself that you were in probably that unsure category. Where do you see yourself now? And has it been just from this experience and really just to show like how easy it is with a bit of education behind what we're doing, we can change those minds of those unsure voters?
Yeah, so as a nutritionist, I mean, I was really pragmatic. I know that people need to eat, and I feel like everyone should have the right to choose, and there are just, for whatever reason, geographical reasons, the environment, whatever, some countries just don't have the ability to have such a diverse food supply. And so Australia, if they can, we should help them. I get that, totally get that. But in my mind, it was like, well, at the cost of animal welfare, I don't know. And, you see this stuff in the media, and I also thought, well, yeah, something happened that was really bad, but this is Australia. We are like world-class for coming up with regulations and policies and processes on everything. We've got flowcharts for every single thing. I'm sure we've picked it up. We've done better, but I don't know what. And so I know Karen sent me stuff from the Livestock Collective. I actually heard Tiffany speak a couple of years ago, and this is going to sound so bad, but I was interested in the Livestock Collective not because of the animals, only because of her. I was like, oh, wow, this is a young lady who spends her life living on a ship. Like, why? Why would she do that? What does she do on a ship? Where does she travel around the world? Like it connected with me on a different level, right? And so I didn't see the gravity of it. I didn't get it. And so when I asked Karen, I'm like, can I see? I'd like to see. I want to see for myself, and I want to ask people questions. And when I started probing and asking those questions, I saw the human aspect to the whole thing. When I've come back to Brizzy, which is where I live, Brisbane, I also do work in Melbourne as well, at Uni of Melbourne, and talking to my colleagues, showing them the video footage, showing them the photos, and all of them exactly the same. Like, the animals are packed in this ship, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I was a cow, I want to come back as a cow on that ship, and I want to go to Indonesia because they feed them grass by hand. Like, just showing them this stuff in a format that makes sense to us. And so for nutrition people, it's dealing with nutrition security, dealing with food security. For the food industry, it's explaining to them like, hey, yeah, we'd be great to send them boxed meat, but they don't have supply chain set up for it. So what do you do then? You're just going to send them more E. coli in a box? Like, they can't deal with that. Dealing with food wastage for the environmental scientists, like this is actually minimizing food wastage. So presenting it in packages that resonated with those different groups, 100% change of mind across the board. Nobody who was in the unsure category is still unsure. They're all forers now. Yeah.
Please put your hands together. Thank Annalise once more time. That's great. Thank you very much.